I'm David. This is Michael. Welcome to our show where we understand it's pedantic to scrutinize the minutiae of our favorite TV shows and movies, but stick with us while we banter, because while it's of no true consequence, still we endeavor to be precise about the classification of the genre when we ask, does it sci-fi though?
And as always, we welcome your likes, subscribes, and Patreons. And today we are looking at one of the classics of science fiction, as it's described, Star Wars.
Yeah. So there was really no other way to start this podcast other than with Star Wars.
Yeah.
So today Michael will be making the case for Star Wars as I run through our list of criteria. So Star Wars is a famous example of sci-fi. Real quick, just run me through what are some of the immediate tropes that Star Wars has that pushed it into people's imaginations as sci-fi.
Well, we got the spaceships. We got the X-wing. We got the large star destroyers. We got the lightsabers. The Force. All these things captured our imagination, and was really well presented in a nice adventure tale.
Many times you see spaceships and aliens and fancy robots or droids in this case.
Yeah.
People, sci-fi.
Sure, absolutely.
But we've narrowed down our 7 criteria for what we think a film needs to do and able to claim that it's sci-fi's.
Right.
So the first one is one that we have a ton of answers to. So sci-fi has to have a rule change. It can't be the same kind of world that we're living in. There has to be things that change the rules. It could be natural rules in terms of how the physics works in this world. It could be societal, or it could be technologic. So what are our rule changes?
Well, first we have the Force. This is probably the most distinct, thing that Star Wars has. That
ends up being the most critical,
and ultimately is the most powerful thing in the whole universe. And we also have the fact that it's set in the past in a galaxy far, far away, so it's nowhere near us and not in our time. So we are dealing with several planets as well as large political systems that is different and distinct from anything we have here.
So Star Wars definitely checks the boxes on rule changes. But what's important is for that rule change has to lead us into the second criteria. There has to be a distinct event. And one of the rule changes has to be central to driving that distinct event. And that event has to happen in our show's universe that could not happen in ours. So if we had to try to narrow it down, what could the distinct event be?
Well, the main thing about the world of Star Wars is the oppression of the Empire, especially in the first trilogy. But the main focus of the universe is the Force. That's probably the strongest thing that's going on in the universe. But it's not really central to the Empire. It's secondary. It's on the periphery.
Right.
So it doesn't really provide a lot of conflict.
Yeah.
It's more a journey of discovery than it is that of one of drama.
Yeah. Now, you can make the argument in the prequel trilogy that the powers given to the Sith through the Force is what enables them to set up the Empire.
Right.
But we don't come there for a long time.
We don't even get that, in the first trilogy.
Probably our best source of a distinct event in A New Hope would be seeing Vader really wield his power, to be a dictator.
Right.
Whenever he boards the rebel ship, and whenever he's at his board meeting.
Right. He easily recognizes the most powerful person in the room.
Mm-hmm. And he oppresses in ways that we can't in our universe.
Right. And we're learning about the powers that he possesses, as we meet and experience what he's doing.
So, if we continue from the distinct event to the conflict fuel, in sci-fi, the thing that drives our hero and that is the source of our struggle has to be tied to that distinct event and has to really utilize the rule change in order for it to be special in sci-fi. What's the closest thing we have to conflict fuel here?
Well, the Force is really something that Luke is discovering, on his path to become a hero and a Jedi. but it doesn't really drive, our conflict. It's more of a rescue mission, and then it becomes, a battle, to fight the Death Star, which only at the very end does he actually use the Force to defeat the Death Star. But anyone could have done, what he did.
It was more of a tool,
Right. Yeah.
but not the critical component.
Right. We have seen we saw other pilots try and fail.
Use the Force, Luke. Let go, Luke.
Yeah.
Once he-
Assembling that squadron of fighters and making the assault on the Death Star was not purely driven by the Force.
No, nothing about the Force was really present in the battle until the very, very last second.
And when Vader shows up and we get the little conflict there.
Right.
You could say that we have a little bit more conflict fuel that eventually happens later when in Empire Strikes Back, Luke starts to feel this responsibility that the only way the Empire can be stopped is if Vader can be stopped.
Right.
And I'm the one that's responsible for it.
Right.
And then the Force becomes, I have to do it because I have access to the Force, and only I can stop him because he has access to the Force. We get that little bit later. It doesn't really come out until Empire, though.
Right. And really the shift, or the focus shifts to more of a redemption, as opposed to, pure adventure and discovery. We're kind of discovering the world in the first episode. But as we learn more about the world, it's more about redemption of the characters that we met earlier.
Which brings us to the fourth part of our criteria, the human problem. So the struggle that we fight and the battle that we fight really has to be internal for our hero. It has to be a battle that they're fighting in their heart or a battle that they're fighting in their mind.
Right.
So redemption's part of the human problem here.
It's more, at best we could describe, Luke's battle with the dark side, to,
Resisting temptation.
resist temptation, not giving in to his fears, or letting those emotions rule his actions. We, as we move to the earlier prequels, that we meet Anakin, and he struggles with the same thing, where he's using his emotions to drive his actions, and not coming to decisions through peaceful coexistence with the Force. The quiet mind is the focus of the Jedi, and not the Sith. The Sith is use your emotions. They're power. So this is the best conflict fuel that we have. But it doesn't really drive especially the initial trilogy.
Right. Because really what's driving our hero is he's on the hero's journey.
That's right.
Which Lucas very intentionally talks about. He used that part of his playbook. That we start very early on. We get a literal call to adventure. He's on the moisture farm, and there's something that beckons him to go, and he gladly goes. He crosses a threshold that's like a point of no return, and he's off and out into the wider world that he's exploring and discovering and growing with. He gets a mentor. He has conflict. He goes through a low point. There's a transformation. Luke goes through atonement, but really he seeks atonement for his father.
Right.
Eventually in the in Empire,
much later on,
and then in the Return of the Jedi. And then we eventually get, his return home, the hero's journey complete. He's accomplished his quest, and he's grown from, a child into a man, and he has all these ideals.
Classic adventure story stuff, not necessarily science fiction.
But that really leads us to the next part, the mirror.
Right.
So for sci-fi, whatever the struggle our hero goes through, in the viewer, our personal lives, we have our own struggles that are going with, and we want the hero to be representative of us, the hero struggle to be representative of our struggles.
Right.
And so we have some broad brushstrokes here.
Right. We're dealing with archetypes that fall from World War II. The Empire, is basically Germany. And all our heroes, are merely rising up to fight against oppression.
Right.
And the oppression being tyranny. So it's not even social oppression. It's merely forcible restrictions.
Democracy versus dictatorship.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just our system versus your system. The right way is freedom.
And we get some elements from Lucas because he really sought out for the bad guys are bad and the good guys are good, and he wanted the good guys to be role models because these were movies for kids.
Yeah.
And so
Young kids, yeah.
young kids, and so he wanted to only portray positive things in his characters, and so he wanted a little kid looking at it and being in a hard situation, a moral quandary. Do you do what's right or you do what's wrong?
Right.
And he's like, be courageous and do the right thing.
Do the right thing, yeah.
But they're pretty broad brushstrokes.
Yeah.
We get a little bit in terms of role models.
Right. We don't have a lot of choices that the characters even have to make. Most of the paths that they choose are not hard choices for them to
Right.
There's not a lot of ifs, ands, or sitting back and thinking about what I need to do here. It's pretty straightforward stuff. So just be like Luke or be like Han. Just be a hero.
And so the what if question is also very light here. All the interesting questions that we walk away wondering are all just what if I was in this world, but they're not the other way. They're not because of this world. What would I do in my life?
Right.
It's what if I was a Jedi? Wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah. Or what if I had a lightsaber?
Yeah.
What if I had force powers?
That would be neat.
That would be really cool. That'd be really, really exciting.
And so we dream about these.
Yeah.
We got the action figures.
Right.
So there's some what if questions, but it's kind of backwards. We're asking what if we were in the story,
Right.
not because of the story. Like what would I do differently in my life?
Yeah. How does this affect me now? It's more an escape. An adventure. The journey of discovery.
Yeah. And because they're not asking any big what if questions, there's also no examined ideal. Because when there's a moral quandary in sci-fi, the examined ideal is an opportunity for them to, for the author to propose a solution,
Right.
to give you hope that there is a right way, and you could try this.
From this perspective, you can see, as I've laid it out, that the best choices is this. This would be a solution. If everyone cooperated, type of thing. But yeah, we're strictly on a good versus evil path here. The oppressor versus those who seek to be unchained.
So does it sci-fi though?
In a hard sense, no.
Yeah.
At the very best, the softest sense, because it's just a space opera. As Lucas himself, he never claimed that this was science fiction.
So I went off and wrote my own space opera, and developed the story. And
he would call it fantasy, and a space opera on several occasions in official Star Wars publications.
Yeah. Yeah, I would have to agree. We're there on the rule change, but it's like each criteria we go to after that, we get farther and farther away as we go down, the hero's journey in this fantasy universe,
Right.
instead of going down, this examination of moral quandary
In our society,
in our society and sci-fi. But, all movies and all shows have different layers, and so there's certainly some minor sci-fi themes, and we get some light moments where we get some of those things that we reference, but ultimately, we said, when you ask the question, does it sci-fi? It's an intentional thing. And Lucas clearly did not set this up for its main purpose to be, sci-fi analysis.
the underpinnings of all of the storytelling doesn't revolve around, the sci-fi ideals. It revolves around, the fantasy ideals and the hero's, adventure.
Yeah. And, our answers to the question would be different if we talked more in depth about the sequel trilogy, the prequel trilogy, the animation, Clone Wars, Rebels, Mandalorian, and maybe we will address those in the future.
Right.
What would be your rating of Star Wars movies?
Well, Star Wars, as a rating, I would give it 17 stars.
Out of?
25.
So still really high up there.
It's still good. It's a good
Yeah.
show.
You've enjoyed it, and you've kept with it.
That's right. I've bought in early, and I'm still all in.
Yeah. I would give it 3 fingers. 3 fingers.
Still
up.
a solid rating.
I enjoy it. I don't love it. Star Wars wouldn't be my very favorite, but I've seen every movie. I've seen every TV show.
Every incarnation.
I've seen everything.
Yeah.
And, many of them, I saw them, on release day.
Right.
So I'm clearly invested in this universe. I enjoy it. But saying it's not sci-fi isn't a detriment to its quality. It's just a divergence of its purpose.
Right.
It does something else.
It doesn't have the depth of a true sci-fi. But it is a good adventure.
Right. And I enjoy it for its fantasy nature.
Right.
Thanks for sticking with us through the show. While our opinions don't matter, your like, subscribes, and Patreon support does. Remember to keep asking the question, does it sci-fi though?